Chapter 1, Warded Locks, How to Identify Them, How They Work, and How to Defeat Them. First, let's look at how to identify a warded lock. These are some example keyholes you might be familiar with. They are usually found on warded locks. Today, warded locks can be found on cheaper padlocks, furniture, handcuffs, luggage, and many other low security applications. When the keys are inserted into this type of lock, they will generally slide in and out with no resistance. Only when turning the key will you begin to feel any resistance. More importantly, there will be no pins or wafers when looking inside the keyhole. Now to get started, let's look at how a very simple lock design works. What you see is a deadbolt. This is the part that slides in and out of the door. This piece is the locking bolt. When it turns, it locks and unlocks the door. Finally, this is the keyhole where the key is inserted. This is a key for a warded lock. It can also open the simple lock that we just presented. At the tip of the key is the key's bit. It turns the locking bolt and unlocks the door. And these are protrusions. They do not unlock the door. They make it easier to turn the key, but are not essential. Keep in mind that any one or more of the protrusions could be the necessary bit, but you never know which one. Now let's make our simple lock into the warded lock. We simply achieve this by adding wards. The wards will allow the key with the right combination of protrusions to turn. Observe how the protrusions do not touch the wards. Today, warded locks are not nearly as common as their pin tumbler counterparts. They can, however, still be found everywhere, including your local hardware store. At first glance, they might even appear the same as pin tumbler padlocks, except for their lower price. One way to identify a warded padlock is by its distinctive keyhole. The keyhole is often made of a small, free-spinning disc with a jagged hole cut into it. This hole acts as a type of ward. Only a key with the appropriate profile and shape can pass through it. This padlock is constructed from many metal slabs stacked on top of each other and held in place with 4 rods. Most of the slabs simply provide 3 holes, 2 for the shackle and 1 for the key through which to pass. Some slabs, however, are specifically designed to serve special purposes. In this example, 2 of the slabs are special and provide the actual locking mechanism. These slabs act as wards. The key can easily pass through them as you insert it into the lock. But if you try to turn the key, the ward will prevent it from rotating, unless the key is cut thin enough at that point to rotate in the slot. For example, instead of a round keyway, some of the slabs have a flat slit that only allow the key to pass through but not turn. Each of them contains a piece of spring metal that rests in a notch in the shackle. As long as this small piece of metal is in the notch, the shackle cannot be raised and will remain in the lock. The key or other tool simply bends this metal spring out of the way. Once it has cleared the notch, the shackle is free to leave the lock. It is important to note that this lock has 2 metal pieces locking the shackle in place, one on each side of the shackle. The lock will not open unless both metal pieces are moved out of the way at the same time. Now that you are familiar with the parts of the padlock, watch as the key moves in and frees the shackle. If the key is inserted partway into the lock, it may not be possible to turn it. Also notice that the two bits in contact with the spring are necessary for this lock to open. Often, warded locks only need one bit on a key, but in this case two are needed. When the proper key is fully inserted and rotated, it will depress both metal pieces out of the notches in the shackle. The shackle then becomes free to pop out of the lock and rotate. Picking warded locks is relatively quite simple. All you need to do is move the locking bolt. Unfortunately, there will be wards in your way. The easy way to handle wards is by simply avoiding them. If your key doesn't have any metal protrusions that get in the way of wards, then the wards won't stop it from turning. Let's make a key with just a stem and a bit. The bit is used to turn the locking bolt. There are no protrusions on the stem to get in the way of the wards. This key would only have the bare minimum amount of metal to work with. Because of this, they are called skeleton keys. The best way to pick a warded lock is to have a collection of skeleton keys for the various types of warded locks. Try each key in your set on the lock. Insert the key as far as you can and attempt to turn it. If it doesn't work, try moving it in and out or around slightly. Then, move on to the next key. Depending on the type and shape of the warded lock, you will need an appropriate skeleton key. There are sets of common skeleton keys that locksmiths can use successfully in most situations. Often, nothing more than a simple bent wire or L-shaped tool is needed to manipulate the lock to open. Most handcuffs in use today also utilize the warded lock. These devices are specifically adapted to restrain physical movement. Those handcuffs that get regular use must be durable as well as cost-effective. In normal use, the wrist clasp can simply be closed and ratcheted shut. Professional handcuffs also allow for double locking. This allows them to prevent further tightening. This helps diminish undue and unintended bruising on those who must wear them. It also makes the cuffs harder to shim open or pick. The key must first be rotated in one direction and then the other to completely open the cuffs. The first turn disables the double locking mechanism. The second turn disengages the ratcheting mechanism and allows the cuff to swivel out of the wrist clasp. Sometimes you will find that producing an actual key is useful. One method of doing this is called impressioning. First, you must find a suitable blank to substitute for the key. Actual blanks for many warded locks are uncommon, since these locks are considered too cheap to make duplicate keys for. A key for a different lock of the same type is often a great item with which to start. An appropriate blank must fulfill the following requirements. It must comfortably fit into the keyhole, but not scrape along the sides of the keyway, and be strong enough to turn the locking bolt, and be able to handle a good amount of force without breaking or bending. It should also be able to withstand the stress of grinding and filing. Any long, flat piece of metal will often suffice. A jigsaw blade can easily fulfill these requirements. They come in a variety of sizes, are strong, cheap, and easy to find. If you choose to work with a blade, it is a good idea to be safe and grind or file down the teeth of the blade. For a tool, files work great, are inexpensive, and easy to find. A grinding wheel, however, will help your work proceed much quicker and easier. You can find these at most local hardware stores. A thinner cutting wheel will enable you to have more precise cuts. Once you have a good blank with which to start, you are ready to begin impressioning. You will need to put a coating on the blank that can easily be scratched off or marked on. A common way to achieve this coating is to hold the blank above a candle flame. The soot that rises in the smoke will cover the blank with a thin black coating, which can easily be scratched off. Another method is to use a candle to melt some wax and coat the blank with an even layer. Getting just the right thickness will take practice. You can also use a marker, tape, or anything else which will let you see the impression marks. When you are satisfied with your coating, you can begin impressioning. Insert the blank into the lock and rotate it with a good amount of torque in both directions. It should hit the wards inside the lock and not turn very far. Your goal is to have the wards mark the coating on your blank. It helps to jiggle the blank slightly to make the marks more visible. Now, gently pull the blade and observe the new markings left by the wards. You simply have to cut or grind away the portions of your blank that have marks on them. Ignore any long marks down the length of the blank that you made while inserting or removing it. Once you cut away the parts of the blank that are marked, your new key should open the lock. You may have to repeat this process with this key a few times if there are recessed wards you did not initially encounter.